We had discussed about various methods for collection of insects and arachnids. We have looked at the use of hand. We have looked at aspirator. We have also looked at use of collecting nets like the aerial nets, the sweep nets, and the aquatic nets. We also looked at the use of beating sheets and many others. So we want to continue our lecture with the use of forum traps for the collection of insects, the use of forum traps for the collection of insects. Now, the pheromone traps are chemical substances that are emitted by insects for communication, usually by insects of the opposite sexes to attract mates. So these substances are synthesized to attract insects, like the emperor moths that produce such forum, the pheromone chemicals. And this method is a very effective way of collection of insects. The pheromone is placed on a container and then hung maybe to a stick or any other thing. It could even be the branch of a tree or a metal, and kept in an open place. And the insects are attracted. When they get to the pheromone, they get immersed in it and they are collected later. So that's the use of pheromone traps. We also have the suction traps. Suction traps draw specimens into a receptacle or net by creating a downdraft. That's they create just like a fan. It's able to blow breeze. This one blows in the opposite direction where it draws the specimen into the container. It draws the specimen into the container, and these ones are later harvested. This is a suction trap. An example of a suction trap. It has a container at the top, at the bottom, and then this, when the fan turns, usually in anti-clockwise direction, you can use a vacuum cleaner for this purpose too. Draws the insects, and the insects fall into this container and are then collected. We also have the window pane or the interception trap. This trap consists of a vertical pane of glass, plastic, or gauze placed across the flight path of insects. The glass or the plastic gauze is placed, the plastic or the gauze is placed in the path where the insects are flying. So as they fly, they hit this pane and then fall into a soapy water that's placed underneath the obstruction, or it could also contain ethylene glycol. So they fall in and can't escape. This method is particularly suitable for heavy-bodied insects such as beetles. Now here is a window pane trap. Here is a window pane trap. You see the glass here, or a gauze that's placed in the flight path. And since it is transparent, the insects will not know that a glass is there. As they fly and hit on the surface of this glass, they fall into the pane. They fall into the container that contains ethylene glycol or other substances. They fall into the container. All right, so that's the window pane or interception trap, how it is being used. We have the Melis trap that's also used for the collection of insects and the arachnids, and it's used to collect insects such as bees, wasps, and flies. This type of trap resembles a tent with two open sides. It has a vertical gauze wall in the middle that intercepts flying insects upwards into a killing bottle fixed to the highest point of the trap. Now here is a window pane trap. It has a tent-like substance, and then a bottle here, killing bottle here. The insects fly up usually, and then they get trapped inside the bottle. All right, so that's a window pane trap. Another method for the collection of insects is rearing. There are some insects and arachnids that may be immature when collecting and may not be properly identified. There are some that you only find the eggs of the insects or the arachnids, and you wouldn't know which type of insect it is. So such insects or arachnids are reared. You keep them in a suitable environment. And usually appropriate conditions are required, such as appropriate temperature, appropriate humidity, and food should be available to rear them. Particularly those that are in the larva or pupa stage of the insect, they need food to survive. The food that they can eat to survive. They are kept in such a place and preserved until they mature, and then they are collected and properly identified. Now, the methods that are used for the rearing of insects and arachnids include rearing in cages, where insects are reared in cages. Some insects that are aquatic insects are reared in aquaria, and some are reared in emergent boxes. Particularly the eggs of insects and arachnids are reared in emergent boxes where they are being incubated until they emerge, until they hatch from such boxes. So ladies and gentlemen, that's how far we can go in this lecture. We have so far talked about different types of collection methods. We have talked about different types of methods that are used to collect insects and arachnids. We have looked at different types of methods that are used to collect insects and arachnids. We mentioned that we have hand collection. We have the use of aspirators or the pewter, and we also have other methods for the collection of insects and arachnids. So next time we'll look at preservation of insects and arachnids. Now here is a recap of what we have discussed so far. A recap of what we have discussed so far. All right, so like we've said earlier, we have looked at the various collection methods of insects and arachnids. And insects and arachnids have the vastest methods for collection because they are so diverse. They are very, very diverse. Their diversity is very high. They have high biodiversity. And because of that, various methods are used. We have looked at hand collection, that you can use your hand to collect slow-moving insects. You can use your hand to collect slow-moving insects. And we also looked at the use of aspirators. That aspirators, which are suction devices, are used to collect insects. Aspirators, which are suction devices, are used to collect insects and arachnids. And we said that to collect the insect with the aspirator, you suck the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece is being sucked, and then the insect goes in through the mouthpiece, goes in through the other part of the tube and gets into the veil, which is being demonstrated here. Then we also discuss the use of collecting nets. The aerial nets are used to collect insects that are flying in the air, like the mosquitoes, the flies, and many others. You swing the net, and then the net captures these insects. The net is being swung in the air to capture these insects. And once it captures the insect, you flap it over immediately. You turn it over so that the insects and arachnids would not escape. The insects and arachnids would not escape. Then we also looked at the use of sweep nets. We said the sweep nets are used to collect insects and arachnids that are found in grasses. Okay, and these nets are swept on the surface of the grasses to collect insects such as the grasshoppers and many others, just as it's been demonstrated here. You swing it, and then it collects these insects and the arachnids, and immediately flap it over. You flap it over, and then the contents are then turned into a collecting bottle. And we also discussed about the aquatic nets that are used to collect insects and arachnids that are found in the aquatic environment, such as this water strider, the bug, and the aquatic spider are collected. We also mentioned the use of beating sheets that are used to collect insects and arachnids that are found, that are hidden in leaves of trees. And such ones are collected with the beating sheets. You have a sheet, a white sheet that has a handle and a stick that's used to collect these insects, such as the beetles, the bugs, the stick insects, the caterpillars, the pseudoscorpions, the spiders, and the mites. And just as has been illustrated here, this stick is used to hit the surface, the leaves, and the insects fall into this beating sheet, and they are being collected either by hand, particularly the slow-moving ones and the non-toxic ones, or they are collected with aspirator. We also looked at use of knockdown sprays that are used to spray insects that fall into a white sheet. Then we also looked at other methods like the use of the traps. Okay, so the knockdown sprays are used to spray on the surfaces of the trees or plants or the stems to collect these insects and the arachnids. We also talked about the use of extractors. We have two types of extractors. We have the Baylis funnel, and we also have the Mazorsky-Winkler extractor. The Baylis funnel consists of a light bulb and a bottle that contains alcohol, so it can be improvised. The light drives the photophobic insect into the funnel and down through the funnel down into the bottle that contains alcohol. And we also looked at this. That's an improvised Baylis funnel. Then we also have the Mazorsky-Winkler extractor that's used in the field where there's no light. It consists of the canvas and funnel, and it's without a light bulb. It's hung on the branch of a tree where it falls into, where insects that are photophobic fall into this container. Then you also remember that we also looked at baits and refuges, that some insects and arachnids are usually found in fermenting foods, dung, or carrion. And these are used to attract the insects, and they are being collected. We also mentioned the use of sieves, that sieves are used to collect these insects and arachnids that are found in ground litter, leaf molds, rotten wood, mammal and bird nests, and others. These substances are placed in the sieves. The sieve or the shifter is being shaken, and they fall into a white cloth, and they are now collected with the aid of faucets, a brush, or aspirator. So we can use various sieves, even the ones we have in the house can be used for this purpose. We have so many traps that are used also for the collection of insects. We have the pitfall traps, the light traps, the yellow pan traps, the suction traps, the paper band traps, the butterfly traps, we have the pheromone traps, the suction traps, the window pane, and we have the mailing traps. Now, the pitfall trap, like we said, requires a bucket that's dug into the ground, and then when it is dug into the ground, it should be at the level of the soil, and it's used to collect ground-moving insects and arachnids. And we just looked at this. First, you dig the soil, and then you put the bucket in the hole that you've dug, and then you cover it up and inspect daily. You go back the next day to inspect. And like I said earlier, that you can also use baits. That baits can be used to attract some insects into this trap. And sometimes you also put barricades to make these insects to fall into the traps. You can use baits such as spoiled fruits, or vegetables, or excrement, or even meat to attract the insects. And it's advised you remove the insects that you catch each morning. You said the pitfall traps are used for other purposes, like the collection of amphibians and reptiles, the collection of mammals and other arthropods, like the crabs, the millipedes, the centipedes that crawl on the surface of the floor can also be collected. We also looked at light traps. That light traps used to collect nocturnal insects like the beetles, the cockroaches, the crickets, the mayflies, the moths, and the stoneflies. And these methods consists of a white cloth that is suspended, a white cloth or a sheet that is suspended with a light that is hung in front of it. And when you put on the light attracts this specimen at night. When you put it on at night, it attracts these insects, and they get attached to the white sheet, and you can collect them with the aid of forceps and other means, or even by hand, those that are not harmful or that are slow moving. Then we also said that you can improvise by using a bucket and a light. A white bucket and a bulb can be used to improvise in this case. You also have the yellow pan trap, where you have a tray that contains water and detergent and kept outside to trap insects. Then we also looked at the suction trap that draws insects into a container. Then we also have paper band trap, the use of corrugated substances that are wrapped on the crevices of plants, of trees, that trap insects that hide themselves in these crevices. They see them as they see these artificial crevices as a home, and then you harvest by removing those corrugated papers and put them in a paper bag or a poly bag, and you later harvest them with a white tray or so. Then you also have another trap that's called the butterfly trap. The butterfly trap is used to harvest fast-flying butterflies that cannot be easily caught, and usually that fly very high. Those butterflies are usually collected. They usually dwell in tree canopies, and since they cannot be caught, you prepare a butterfly trap and hang it on the branches of the trees, high up in the tree, and it consists of basically a fabric that is cylindrical and has that has the top enclosed, and a platform, a landing platform, and then a bait that is placed in a plate. And the butterfly basically lands on the platform and then walks towards the bait, and then while it's trying to fly, it now gets caught up in the fabric gauze that is on the top, and it's been harvested daily. We also looked at the pheromone trap. That's basically the pheromone trap basically consists of a chemical substance that contains pheromones, that are chemical substances that are emitted by insects for communication, particularly during breeding season. They use them for communication. Males and females use them to communicate. So when they are placed in containers like this, such insects are attracted, and thinking that it's another insect. When they fly and they get to that area, they mistakenly get trapped in the trap. Then we have the suction trap, which we have looked at. We also have the window pane trap that consists of glass or any other substance that obstructs the path of the insects, and the insects hit this obstruction and fall into a container that has alcohol or ethylene glycol or a soapy water, and then such insects are being harvested. Then we also looked at the malice trap that consists of a tent-like substance and a killing bottle for the collection of insects and arachnids. Then we also said that some insects that are immature can be reared, okay, in order to get the adult stage of the insects. And they can be reared in cages, they can be reared in aquaria, particularly the aquatic insects, and they can be reared in emergent boxes, particularly when it is the egg of the insects. So that's how far we can go in today's lecture. That's how far we can go in today's lecture.